Hi everyone, welcome back to Redefine the Circle. I'm Ashley Sunshine, co-owner and head of pitching development here at OGX. First official podcast, or Redefine the Circle podcast, I should say, under OGX. So this is exciting.
Yeah.
Another really exciting piece is that today I am joined by the one and only, now our official team member, Ryker Chason. Ryker, welcome to Redefine the Circle.
Yeah, I'm so glad to be here. I'm glad to be on the first OGX
I
podcast.
know. And we have never shot a podcast together.
We haven't. It's a couple with Krista, but none with you.
We did once, maybe 2 years ago, through with
through Rapsodo. Yeah, you and I together.
But this is the first Redefine the Circle. Okay, well, this is going to be wonderful because as far as I'm concerned, this is now a pitching powerhouse episode. So we're here to talk about recruiting.
Yep.
And this has been on our brains a lot the last few weeks. Honestly, I'm pretty sure it was like your second day here, officially working here.
Topic.
And you and I are typically, like bouncing through the ceiling about some topic, pitching related, and recruiting really has been like a fire topic for us.
Yeah.
I mean, literally, I think that second day, we're both like on fire about it. And I want to really take this as an opportunity to talk about why we are so passionate about it, why we have so much energy around it. Usually we have a lot of energy around a topic because we know that some sort of system is not in the right state for our game. We know that it's sitting in a place where it's really not being done the most efficient way. We're seeing the ramifications on our athletes. Today, you're going to be able to weigh in on how that even impacts college coaches. And as always, instead of just bringing the problems to the table, we like to sort of sit back and say, is this a space that we belong in, that we can get involved in as far as educating coaches and athletes and parents? And then can we help do something about this? And we really do feel like we can, right?
Totally.
So today, the first step is to start to put that education out on the table, out to our listeners here for Redefine the Circle, to be able to talk about, like, for a lot of people, they know what they know.
Yep.
They're not necessarily like what could be better about it. Or if they do think they have an idea of what could make it better, they're not in a position of power to do it, right? Just like we hear athletes and parents all the time, like, oh, how can this be the system? But we feel like we have to participate. Even college coaches, right? I know this isn't best, but it's like everybody's kind of locked in and forced to participate in the way it is now.
Totally.
So let's spend today talking a little bit about first what we see as the problem.
Yep.
Okay. I'm going to start from the perspective of what we hear from our OGX athletes. First and foremost, when it comes to recruiting, what I would say is that we feel a huge disconnect between what we do here, what our athletes are committed to as far as player development is concerned, watching what their baseline data looks like, data with ball flight data, with power numbers, stability. There's a variety of things we collect data on, obviously. And watching those trends, watching the growth. They're very attached and connected to, what does it look like for me to be better?
Yep.
But then they are in the recruiting system and it's like they're forced to, or feel as if they're forced to, abandon everything. They abandon like what it means to really make sure that what you're showing is your best. They abandon workload concepts. For example, they may say, okay, I just finished my fall season. We know you're exhausted. We see in your data you're exhausted. This isn't just like an arbitrary, like, you look tired today. We're whether seeing maybe velos down, we're seeing regressions in their movement quality, power. There's a variety of things that would signal to us like you are fatigued. Even the athletes, they're no strangers to this, right? They're like, I'm tired. And they're like, but I have 4 camps because I have to go to camps, right? And I'm not saying that camps are bad, but essentially what we find our athletes doing is just plowing through the entire year with this expectation. So then they'll even come home from that camp and say, like, I only threw 61, not 64. And I'm like, why the heck do you think that you'd be throwing your best velocity right now?
Right.
We already know we can't expect our athletes to be throwing their top velocities all year, but it's like everyone just abandons what they know to be true. They abandon this concept of like, let's preserve time in the year to be able to train and influence. And we start to just like parade around. Am I in high school season? Am I in summer season, fall season, camp season, back to high school season, where I'm just parading around with the same data right? I'm parading around all year long, not having an opportunity to rest my body, recover, and grow. And they know it, but they don't know how to get out of it.
Right. They're like, if I don't do it, then I won't get recruited.
Right. So recently, the reason why on day 2, I said to you, like, we've got to talk about this. We've got to come up with a solution because our athletes, they are educated enough where they see the disconnect, but they're like, can you help me?
Yep.
Because I want to get out of that system. And I feel as if what we're doing here at OGX and seeing our data and trends can then you help me with recruiting so I don't have to just all year long show up to all the things and be exhausted and then, be stuck with a 4.5-inch drop ball is my best pitch for eternity of what seems like, right? Okay, so that, from my perspective, is what we're getting from the athletes. Yep. And this is just from the perspective of our OGX athletes. I would probably venture to say that the athletes that don't have any data, they don't have any player development or training systems in their world, all they have is the 800 tournaments and 900 camps in between them. Right?
And you hope that they're rawly talented or athletic enough to make it through that. Right. But so many kids slip through the cracks because that's the system.
Right, because that is so ridiculous to be able to identify with the masses, right? Okay, so that's what I feel is the issue that we have on the table with athletes. Can you talk to us more about what recruiting is like from a college coach's perspective? Because in the relationships that I have from a consulting standpoint, I am working with college coaches to help them with their current athletes.
Right.
And I have so many conversations with them where they're like, oh, I know I have to get to that. But like, I've been recruiting. Yep. It's such a conflict. So can you explain what that really looks like from a college coach perspective?
Yeah, I think you hear often in the college game, like recruiting is your lifeline. And so the better, you'll hear things like the better athletes you recruit, the better coach you are, and so obviously we all want to lead athletes. We want high level athletes. And I think, the thing for me that I learned early on leaving LSU and going to Ole Miss, I'd not recruited before. So that was, my first time out on the trail recruiting by myself. And I was kind of thinking to myself, what am I looking at? What am I looking at? What am I looking for? And as someone who was a young coach going into it, they're like, okay, these are the teams that you go watch. These are the tournaments that you go to. And I'm like, what if there's no pitcher on that team that I can get, or what if there's no body at that tournament that I want? And so I found it very early on really hard to identify the talent. Where was I going? Why was I going there? Oh, because so-and-so's team went there and so-and-so's team was there. And if you get connected to this coach, which there is some validity to that, there are travel ball coaches out there who definitely hold the key to you being able to get recruits from their organizations or their teams. That is definitely, it is a thing and it is an issue in some spaces, in some programs.
Yeah, could I interject for a second?
Yeah.
Because my whole body is like tensing up with major anxiety because one of the things that we feel like, not just in recruiting, but is a major issue in our game is we identify adults of power.
Yep.
These are the coaches.
Yep.
And now they hold the power over young women.
Yep.
As a woman who was a former athlete,
yep.
as a mother, that everything inside of me is like...
And they hold the power over the college coaches as well.
Yes.
If you don't have the relationship with them, if you don't recruit the kids that they think you should recruit, and I'm not saying this is everyone, there are some really good travel ball coaches out there that I have great relationships and I think do things the absolute right way and they are phenomenal. But there are some out there that's the case, like they have Sally Mae and they think Sally Mae is the best pitcher in the 2025 class. That's what we're on right now. And if you didn't recruit Sally Mae, then the next year when Susie Faye is the 2026 and she's the best and you like Susie Faye and you like her family, like all those things, that I've seen it happen all too well. That travel ball coach gives you the cold shoulder because you didn't recruit the kid in the 2025 class. So it's a system that's messed up. But, I kind of early on right away got connected with you guys, when I was at Ole Miss and I started to understand data. That was probably my first dive into like understanding data. What was I looking at? What did I have? Okay, at Ole Miss at the time. And then what did I need? And obviously I felt like at that time when I first got to Ole Miss, there were some things that I felt like I needed to take recruiting, especially from a pitching area up a level. I needed to go after some more talented kids. And I did that and we swung and missed on some. And then it was like, then what? So it's like, okay, I identified, what I have, identified what I want to go after. Yeah, well, also, Ryker, those kids that you want to go after, UCLA, Oklahoma, and whoever else wants them to. So good luck. And so I was like really in that mid tier. And so then I'm like, what am I actually looking at and looking for? And so I would be talking to you guys, and I would be talking to people who knew about data and were actually collecting data. And I'm like, they're like, okay, this kid's throwing 65. This kid has an 8-inch drop ball. This kid has this kid has that. And then I'm like, okay, what does that mean? And how does that fit into my puzzle? And so I think from a college coaching perspective, what we are doing from a consulting standpoint in the game is now we have the college coaches that we have a consulting relationship, and even ones that we don't, ones that have come to behind the scenes days, pitch stock, that we don't even do consulting with. You're starting to see them ask questions about kids' data. You're starting to see them send kids to us to, that they want to recruit or they want to get an assessment on so that they know. But, early on, I didn't know that. I didn't have that. And so then, I'm going around and I'm looking and I start to use my eyes, and then I'm like, I have to get that kid to camp because I need to see her data. But then for me, the issue with that was, it's what we talk about sometimes. It's like, it's that one snapshot. I seen her in July when she's worn down to the ground because she's exhausted because they played all entirely too much, and her velocity was low and her brake wasn't there. And then, maybe I stopped watching her because I looked at that single snapshot. And I think, I know we're going to get into that of what we feel like we contribute and bring to the world, but there's some other things from the college coaching side. It's tough, man.
Yeah.
Like recruiting is they're starting, the NCAA and the NFCA are kind of working together and starting to put some boundaries on some things, which I think is going to be really good for college coaches. But you're talking about, let's talk about the fall. Okay, your kids show up in late August. You got to get them rolling. You're an individuals, and if you're a program that really functions around player development, like I think about myself when I was at Ole Miss, like I got you guys in there right away. We're doing assessments. I'm trying to make sure that they have a really good plan, from a strength perspective, with our trainers all on the same board, and that, that we're getting going in the bullpen. And if they're new kids, I'm trying to get to know them, and just so much player development going on. It's like, okay, you have a few short weeks to do that, and then boom, recruiting starts. And you're not talking just, you're going out and watching. You're going out and watching. You're bringing kids on campus. You're trying to play fall games. You're trying to develop the kids on your own team and maintain that culture and do the falls kind of sometime for like team events. It is so much. The fall is way tougher than the spring. The spring, you're like, let's win softball games. There's maybe a couple of things sprinkled in there. The fall it's crazy, and so we had this contact date, at September 1, which is, if you're really caring about what's going on your own campus from a player development and culture standpoint within your own team, you're locked into that. You're trying to develop your athletes. Now you're going to have to go recruiting and make all these phone calls. And I think a lot of what we hear, I hear, even I heard then there, but I've heard a lot now from this 25 class, and kids who have come and done assessments or trained with us. And they're like, I got 15 calls on September 1. I got 30 calls on September 1. And then I got straight up ghosted.
Right.
And I see it from both sides because I see, you feel like as a college coach, you're running the rat race, you're going around, you're trying to see all these kids. So you're really only getting a small snapshot of each one of them. And if she was good that day, you probably put her on your list to keep watching. And if she was bad, you maybe don't go back and watch her unless, somebody's telling you that you should because she's doing better. So it's like you try to touch all these kids and make all these phone calls. And you're like, oh, today was September 1, but today is 2 days from now is September 3rd, and we throw live, and we have a game, and we have this, and we have that, and it becomes a lot for the college coach.
Yeah.
And so the system is broken, and it's broken from both sides. And you as the college coach, you're going in during the day, you're having meetings, you're managing your team, you're going out to practice, and after practice, you're spending hours a night on the phone, and you're not able to touch base with all those kids. And so I think we have to have some education from both sides.
Yeah.
There's like this travel ball world in the middle that I just don't know if the kids are getting all the information they should be. And you have the college coaches on this side and the athletes on this side. There needs to be a merge of like, I think that athletes need to understand all that the college coaches have going on.
Yeah.
And I think that the college coaches need to understand that these athletes deserve some real honest communication and conversation. And, even I was victim to it when I was at the level. We'd have a kid that would, I'd reach out to her on September 1, maybe the following week, and then things would get slow. And, then based off of the system of what I had been told, it's like, oh, well, you can't tell Sally Mae that, she's our second tier of kid. And I'm like, well, doesn't Sally Mae deserve to know that, like that we may or may not move on her? And And then, people be like, well, what if you don't get her because you told her that? And I'm like, well, then maybe it just wasn't meant to work out, because I think as a college coach, you have to decide, like you have to tier it out of like, these 10 kids are my tier 1, or if I can get one of them, I'd go tier 2, tier 3, even, that you continue to watch. But I think there needs to be some understanding that, and this is where kind of travel ball coaches come in the picture of like, just because somebody said that wasn't their top kid doesn't mean that they don't want her. I wasn't the top pick for the Ole Miss job. I had to fight and claw my way in there. That's the real world sometimes. Like sometimes you're not going to be everyone's number one choice. And I think, the travel ball coaches can kind of merge that world. We can, people in the middle, can kind of merge that world between this college coach and athlete that's so misunderstood right now. Yeah. And we can talk about what everything the college coach has going on and what everything the athlete has going on. And, because you have some kids who, I've seen the other spectrum too. I've seen, top level ranked recruited athletes be like, I went from a normal high school kid yesterday that went to school into practice to like, my life is blown up. All I do is talk on the phone. Mm-hmm. And so I think understanding, the athletes need to be able to step up and say, hey, I'm not interested. Yeah. I appreciate you reaching out. Thank you. Thank you for coming to watch all my games. But I think I'm going to move in a different direction. I've seen a lot of athletes who have a tough time having that conversation with the college coaches. I think we need to like talk about having the tough conversation and what it looks like and understanding it and not taking it so personal and getting your feelings hurt, because, we have had kids who we've not said that to because we were afraid of what the travel ball coach might say or do, or never send us another kid from their organization. We've had people tell us that, and I know other people have too. And it's this broken system. Yeah. That's the best way to describe it. And there's so many layers and pieces to it.
Yeah, I was going to say, let me try to summarize. Let me summarize if we had to say bullet points. One of the issues that we identify is that this idea of power. Yeah. We have had athletes that they're like, they know that they get sometimes mistreated. Yeah. Like the way that they're communicated with is alarming to me. The fact that you would tell your teenage daughter it's okay to let a grown woman speak to you like that is really alarming to me. But they're like, but he or she is going to get her recruited. That nothing.
And they're the only one that holds the key. So you don't ever go against them.
So for us, what we stand for is like, how about you're the maker of your own future?
Right.
Right. So there's a power issue that is, to me, is probably at the top of the list of like very, very alarming, and that we really have to give the power back to the athletes in the decision process. Number two, the things that I'm hearing here is this concept of quantity, meaning like you go out there and everyone is in the same pool, right? It's like, or everyone can identify pitcher XYZ because they're freaking the best.
Right. They're really good.
And so you're like, let me go and watch ABC, ABC, but wait a second, am I really going to have a shot at this kid? So maybe I'm spending all my time on kids that, I'm not to say you never throw your hat in the ring if it's somebody above, because you never know, but you should have this idea of like, if you just spend all of your time, if you're a mid-tier or your program is it's a different scale. Yeah. You don't want to spend all of your time following the kids where everyone else, and now you've missed the kids that were good for you. Right.
And that's another piece though, as the travel ball coach is telling you to show up. He wants you at all his games. Right. Because the more coaches that are back there behind the backstop, the happier the parents are and all this stuff. Well, then he may be telling you, I've had this happen to me. Yeah. They're telling me I have a shot at Sally Mae. Yeah. Sally Mae went to UCLA. Right. So like, I could read through it sometimes that some college coaches can't. They're like, Sally Mae is interested. Yeah, along with Oklahoma, UCLA, Florida State, and the gamut. So
that's
it's like,
actually something I hadn't thought about. It's like this appearance.
Get them all in our game.
Because I look like a rock star. Yeah, this ego power concept.
And that a little bit comes from parents and athletes. They need to be, their cup needs to be filled by that. So everybody has a role.
It's like the another piece that I'm hearing is this concept of like checking the box, even though there's no like substance to it. And for me, I'm like, I'd rather have 2 boxes and they are full of substance than 300. But right now it's like, show up, tell everyone all the things.
I was at the so-and-so game and the so-and-so game when they played each other. And then you don't have a shot at Sally Mae and they push the second or third, pitcher to you. Then it's awkward because they've kind of maybe even told this kid that you're at their game. This kid thinks you're maybe there to watch their team or watch them, and you were never interested in that kid the whole time. Yeah. And it winds up really sticky.
I have conversations with college coaches where they'll say, I have to go to such and such game or tournament. I honestly don't need to. I know what I need to see already. Like I've seen enough, but she won't think that I am interested still if I don't show up. So I'm like, this is out of control, where college coaches are, I mean, they are exhausted looking, like when I'm on calls with them, they are like, woo, I'm free after 10 p.m. to talk about my own pitchers.
Right.
Because I have a recruiting meeting until then. So it's all about quantity, just to like check all the boxes and to show this person and show. So I think for us, we're like, we hate inefficiencies, right? We're establishing or like identifying inefficiencies in our own processes every day of like, how can we really just go after what's real, what's full of substance. And I think you touched on this, right? Like data is like once you all of a sudden now where kids stand with their data and you're like, okay, I know what my current staff looks like, what I need, and now I can go after. So this idea, what would make this process and what has already started to infiltrate the recruiting system is athletes going and having their data, like, here's what you have, right? And that alone makes the system better because now
it's a step up.
It's a step up. We're not just all showing up to the same 3 pitchers and wasting our time and missing out on the pitchers that really would be great fits. Now, here is where I kind of get fired up because I'm like, 95% of high school athletes, their data is not good enough.
Right.
So what I want to like shout, I want to stand on this table and shout to the screen basically. It's like, stop just showing up at camps to measure your data. If your data is just staying the same, right? It's like, this is so important. Go and find out what your data looks like. Find out, where would this put me now? If this was the end of the road of my development, which we know is ridiculous, but if it was hypothetical, where could I fit? Oh, that's not where I was thinking. Right? We have people coming here all the time for an assessment, and their parent will say, based on what you see, what tier do you think she could belong in? I'm like, in this snapshot in time, X. But we don't believe in that. We know that data can be influenced, right? What we've seen is that the traditional methods of influencing data is typically not the way it goes, right? So athletes think they are influencing their data. But if they're getting a snapshot every couple of months, once a year, and it's the same, like, this is not okay. And so essentially, it's not just about data. We're not just all walking around with data that's really interesting and unique. Most people have just average data. So the next tier is about, don't just say like, oh, I went and got my data collected. Okay, well, let's look at where you are. Does that match where you want to go? Assuming not, how do we go after it? Right? How do we go after it?
And then at what point do we have the conversation? You have to start that process early enough. So at what point do we have the conversation, like, okay, September 1, you're 2025, September 1. And then probably by December, we're going to have a conversation of like, okay, I know this is what you wanted. I know this is what we've been pushing toward. We maybe fell short of that. And now we have to start looking at these spaces, go for it, but also understand when the time is, to have a real conversation. And I think that's really important.
So some of the calls that you've already been taking, and we're obviously going to be launching something really specific and solid as far as an ability for athletes to be able to book these calls with you and to have real conversation. Because the conversations that you're having are like, let's look at your data. It's not just about seeing 1 day's worth of data. We track trends. We want to see if you're heading in the right direction. We know there are variables like where you produce power, what your level of stabilities are. Not all of them needs to be great, but there are certain, like you'd rather go for an athlete who's strong in this, even if they're weak in this. Okay, you have this, you only throw 60, but your main pitch is up. That alone is different than if you throw 60, but you have an 8-inch drop ball.
And kids don't know that.
Right.
College coaches don't know that.
Right.
So I think for me, when I was at Ole Miss and I stole one for sure, Caitlin Riley. Love that kid. She got to us and she had been previously passed on by some Power Fives. I had just taken the job. We didn't have a 2021 pitcher. And so she was committed to a different school who their head coach left. And so a couple people told our other assistant, Katie, that you should call this kid. And I'm like, okay, sure. So I called her. She's kind of tough. Dad was a football coach, liked her mentality, never seen her pitch. Took her. We needed a pitcher. And I never forget, you came and did assessments. That was her freshman year. And you said, this is the kid you take. And I was like, okay, because I see a lot of bullet. I see some velo. I see a tough kid, but I see a lot of bullet.
Yeah.
And you're like, but let me tell you why. she is untapped from a strength perspective. Like her power is through the roof, but her movement quality is terrible. So essentially, she has all this power and has no clue how to use it in the motion.
Yep.
And she is bullet, but like because of her patterns and her actions, you clean these couple things up, you're probably getting access to topspin and whatever. A year later, you come back and she has
transformed.
Yeah, it's just amazing.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't have known that, without you. Like I never would have thought to that. So I think for me as a college coach, in the way that I used you guys and the way that I started to understand and learn, was like, okay, I'm going out recruiting. Okay. And I did. I totally fell into that gap of, you felt like, because again, even I was in a position where I felt like I couldn't completely break the system. I started to do it a little differently, sure, but I didn't completely break it. I still felt like I needed to show up at so-and-so's games and so-and-so's games. And we had a kid even locally, she was a regional kid to Ole Miss, who I adored her family. They came to all our camps and stuff. Well, I knew that I was going to go after her, but I needed several pitchers in that class. Yeah. So I started to spread myself out a little bit. And I'll never forget, we were in Colorado and our coach was like, hey, Abby's not sure if you want her anymore. And I was just like, I love that kid.
Right.
Like, I love her. I want her, like all those things. And she's just like, well, like you haven't showed up as much and these things, because that's the culture that's all they know. You can't blame them for only knowing what they know. They know when the coach is there and they're watching that matters. So you know what I did? I went and grabbed our head coach and we sat behind the backstop and I made it clear.
Yeah.
But I don't think that has to be the way. Like, I think there's a better way of like, hey, yes, it's a yes for us. We like her. We're going to continue to watch her. I can't be there at every game because I have to spread myself out. And so, and that kid and her family are amazing people. But that was all they knew, was that when people show up and stand behind the backstop, that means they want you.
Right.
And I think we have to try to figure out how to establish some other way of like interest, for people to understand, and athletes and travel ball coaches and everybody to understand that you're interested. And then, the other thing is, I would go out and I would see kids and I would be like, okay, I need to get them to camp, because I knew for me, and I get it, there's this stigma with athletes about camp and travel ball coaches about camp, because it's for the masses. You show up.
It costs a lot of money. You're flying across the country.
It's a huge investment. And, but these college coaches are saying, come to our camp. It gets very generic. Because, they're trying to blow up these camp numbers. But again, from the college coach side, that's the way that we pay a lot of our volunteer people and people that are low money. So I get it. But, these athletes would go to these camps and it would be the masses, and the travel ball coach tries to follow up and there's no real anything there. There's no real direction. There's no anything there from the athlete. And so, I try to tell our athletes now, and the people that I, consult with now in recruiting, is like, make sure that there's some real interest there. I will do it for you. Have somebody do it for you, where you like, they reach out and make sure, hey, that so-and-so is coming to camp and this is this and this is this, and then following up. And I think that's a system that we could really provide with the athletes that we train. It's like, okay, we're making sure that they know you're coming. There's some interest there. They want you there. We're making sure they know about your data. They can see everything that you've been doing over the last couple months and the ways that you've grown. And then boom, you leave camp. What did they think? Does that fit? And that's a better system than you just, I'm going to Oklahoma State camp. Yeah. And I went and there was 65 pitchers there, but so-and-so asked me for my name.
And my data's probably not even on the mat for that.
Right. And so that's the thing. It's like we have to have better,
So what you're identifying right now, Ryker, is like a third party where you're saying like we can come in. So these parties exist. But here's what I think is so interesting. They're like recruiting services.
Right.
They're like, they don't even know the kid's data.
No, it's not trained. They don't know anything about their training.
Right. And they might get to know them. They might just see their personality. They're like, it's a great kid. It's a great family. And no one's discounting those things.
Sure.
Do they know that they started with a 5-inch drop ball and now they have a 7-inch drop ball that she's also working on an off speed, that she's tunneling this.
And how they did that and how they got there.
And that we think that next year she can add this and that. And I think it's just like, when we all have athletes that come to us and they're like, I also have such and such recruiting service. I'm like, why?
Right. And because as college coaches, we care about the things like having a great family and being a great kid and all those things. We do. 80% of what we care about, probably more, is performance. Right. Like that's what we all are paid to win softball games.
Right.
And we all want to win. We all want to compete at a high level. And so
so public service announcement. Going to a camp and just like hustling is not enough. I mean, that's the reality. Like for kids, like you have to stand out, hustle everywhere.
Yeah.
So.
No, if you want to stand out, show up with like something special, plus velo, plus break.
Drop all.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm following you. If I was a college coach, and a lot of my friends that are college coaches and we do consulting with, somebody is coming to find you at whatever tournament you're going to if you show up with a 9-inch drop ball. Period.
Right.
They just are. And so I think that's the things that the kids need to know too, because you're right. It's like you have this season and that season and this season. It's like, when is the training? And so a lot of the conversations that we're having right now, with athletes that are already committed, even some are already committed and some are still trying to get committed. They're coming up and they're committing to training in this off season. Hey, we don't have high school stuff until March, or some even other kids are not. They played high school this fall, so they don't have high school stuff until the summer. They're like, we're going to come up once a month, twice a month, and commit to this training and try to see this grow. And that's what these kids should be doing. That's what these 2026 and probably 2027 kids should be doing. They should be coming and committing this time to training and training their skill of pitching, so they can see some growth, so that when those people that seen them
show the growth.
Right. So these people that seen them this past fall, go to 1 or 2 camps. Sure. That you're like schools that you're really interested in and are interested in you, and we can help you identify that.
Yeah.
And go to those 1 or 2 camps. I had a conversation with 2027 the other day about this. She's very, very talented, and she's got them all at the backstop right now. She's a big, strong kid. They're looking at physical things. I'm like, sure, go to 1 or 2 camps. Show up here twice a month. Let us track your data and your trends and see your growth. That way, when they show up next summer, they're like, oh, she's gotten better.
Yeah.
And now we see it. Okay, where is she training? What is she doing?
Right.
And then we're in the system and we're talking these guys through this, and then we're able to not only help guide the college coach, but also help guide the athlete.
Yep.
And I think that's where we really come in, as this middle bridge system. And to be honest with you too, I've had a lot of conversations that are opposite of that. I've had a lot of conversations with 2025s, and we're in November and they're extremely discouraged because they had a lot of interest or their travel ball coach they played for a year, 2, 3, 4, 5 years, as they've gotten on a national stage, not, I wouldn't say promise them, but, oh, so-and-so's coming to watch you. They want you. They want you.
Yeah,
they
or
want
if you
you.
play for me,
If
I'll be able to help you with recruiting.
Yeah, and then they don't get recruited. And then they show up to us disappointed, like, can you help me? And I'm like, yes, we can. Do I think you're going to play Power 5 Division I? I don't know.
Right.
Somebody should have told you this a long time ago. What you do is a niche, or we have to grow this, or we have to go up a tier in velocity, or get some more break and do some things. But nobody's giving these kids this information.
Right.
And it's just like, sure, she does this, she throws hard, she gets outs. And again, as a college coach, I have seen kids with break who do not perform as well in the game. Sure, I get that.
Absolutely.
You need to go and watch them compete.
Yep.
But there is a better way than just always showing up and seeing this rundown version of them. And there's also a better way to track these trends and understanding the time of year that they are in, and how that is influencing their data.
Yep, no doubt about it. So if we could recreate the whole world, right? We would say quantity of tournaments is ridiculous. If we say camps,
it's absurd. It's absurd.
Camps are important. Then if parents had 3 less tournaments to fly to, they could spend those resources going to a camp, right? Like, there are so many different ways. The quantity for college coaches, the quantity for athletes, we're all just running around trying to hustle and show up. And
the amount of tournaments and games.
Yes, and trust the college coaches. Are they for me? Are they for their own ego? Are they for power? It's probably a mix of both.
And what are we preparing them for? We're preparing them to go play college softball. If we play more than 2 games, if we play 2 games in a day, I was like, come on, girls, we can do it.
Right. Eat an extra sandwich.
Yes.
Like, barely stand up.
We can do it 2 games a day. These kids are out here 5 and 6 and throwing 3+ games a day. Their workload is the pitching motion. We know this. It just breaks you down.
We have the data. The more games people play, the more they abandon training concepts. Ball flight regresses in break, in velocity, movement quality, increased likelihood of pain.
Right.
Like, we're just out there parading around like the worst versions of our kids.
And in the college game, we're having all these conversations about staffs and piecing things together, and how the unicorn of the Cat Osterman, the Monica Abbott, those days are gone, and if a kid throws upwards of 150 innings, that's a lot for a college program. We have kids out here throwing 150 innings every couple weeks.
Totally.
It's ridiculous. It doesn't match.
No.
And it all comes down to the people who host these tournaments and those things. Totally. Some of that stuff is just, it's wrong. And, there's a system that even the travel ball coaches don't know how to break. Right. They don't know how to not show up to these tournaments and play all these games that these tournaments are saying that they have to play. Yep. And I just think, that it really starts there. We have got to get some parameters on, and I don't know if that turns into a pitch count or something like that. And that starts to control, at these levels, there's a pitch count for athletes and pitchers, so that starts to control, like, at least if we're going to play all these games, we got to spread it out a little more.
Right.
Or, if we start to have like a game limit a day or something, like there's got to be something that helps that system, at least in certain times of year. Like in the fall and things like that, we shouldn't be playing, 5, 6, 7. We have athletes who are playing 7 tournaments, some that college coaches are not even at.
I know, because if it's a recruiting weekend, we're in.
Right.
We just finished state in Georgia.
Yep.
I've got 3 tournaments in a row. Like,
yeah. And these kids are injured and broken. And I've had this conversation with a couple recruits who are committed, and they're like, I have this wrong or this wrong or this wrong. I'm like, you need to shut it down. You need to like come see us. Like, the thing that you and Lauren just put out, the return to throw protocol that's specifically designed to, softball pitching, and not this generic thing that some PT or doctor gave you, whatever. And you need to come get an assessment, and you need to do this return to throw protocol, and you need to understand that you have to manage your workload. Some of these kids, I'm telling you, could be possible generational talent.
Yeah.
They could be the next person who goes and plays in the professional leagues for us. But the shape that they are in right now as juniors in high school, they could very possibly not make it.
Right.
And that breaks my heart.
Totally.
That it just infuriates me and breaks my heart, because I'm just like, God, these kids are just used and abused, and they don't know any better. They don't know any different.
So the taking down the current system that's a task, to say the least.
Yeah.
Right? And so at the very least, do we feel like we have our hands in that, educating, continuing to sort of like put up a little bit of a fight against that? Yes. Yeah. But in the meantime, we do feel like we can do it better right now. We can keep the current structure as is and still do it better. It's not about recruiting services who don't understand your data. It's not about just showing up to 800 showcases and 4,000 camps.
Totally.
It is about understanding, what does my data look like? Where does that put me right now? If I was done growing? Okay. Now, what's the moves for me? How do I trace that? How can I show that coach, here's where I've grown, here's where I'm going after. The next piece I'm doing is this, showing their roadmap, showing their trends, all of these things, right? So we can provide education to our athletes, to athletes who are not yet our athletes, on where that stands, and now start to give them control. In my mind, if the athletes had that information and were guided appropriately, it doesn't matter who you play for. Now, you don't want to be playing, the worst competition.
Sure, C-ball when you're an A-ball pitcher or something.
Yes, I'm not saying that, but you don't have to attach to these 5 travel ball coaches who hold all the power. Now we're talking about athletes can start to steer their own course. And we do that every day here. And I think it's very important that this becomes a real space that we get into, because we know it's better for our athletes. And
it's better for everyone.
Absolutely.
It's better for everyone. It's better for the college coaches, the travel ball coaches. It's better for these parents, that we just, again, so many conversations around, like, I thought it was going to go like this. I thought it should go like this. Like, this is kind of our message to say, like, if you are a 2025, a 2026, a 2024, that you haven't found your place yet, and you're still like lost in this space out here, 24, 25, especially 26 and 27s, get in here.
Yeah.
Get in here and let us help you, because we know that we can help you. Yeah. Like, we know that we can not only help influence your overall health and your patterns and your break and all those things, but we know that we can guide you through this recruiting process if you want to play at a level, because we have the data.
Yeah.
We have the data from 20 plus 30 schools in the last couple of years of like what their pitchers look like. We have individual pitchers from different schools, not the ones that we've just gone to. And we train kids every day, and we know what elite ball flight looks like. And if you don't have that, we know how to get you there.
Yeah.
And so I think we can really, not only from a player development space and that, we can help you from a recruiting space and helping you get where you want to go, and just be having real conversation about it.
All right. In summary, abandon the recruiting myths like yesterday. Abandon them, right? Go after a journey of substance. Know the information. Know where you actually stand. Be able to not only train and listen to him, her, or whoever of whether or not you're getting better or not. See it.
Yep.
See it for
yourself. You
yourself.
need real numbers of data.
Real information. Have that information of like, this is where this puts me. In order to get at this tier, I would need to do this. Does every athlete accomplish it?
No.
Right? No. So, but to be able to have real information on the table, then now you're leading your journey, and you're leading it with reality and with substance.
Yeah.
It's not just this rat race to chase these myths around, or to just put your journey in someone else's hands and like hope for the best, right? So we know that there's real power in that. And it's not about us necessarily as individual people. As much as it is of like, now when we talk about what player development and power of giving journeys back to athletes, it's just been so hard to see this disconnect between they have the power when it comes to training, but recruiting still sits over on this island asking them to abandon all they've committed to from a training standpoint. So we really want to see those worlds come together and merge and create a system that is so much more athlete-centered, healthier for coaches, parents, athletes alike.
And I think that's what fires us up the most is, you and I had that conversation. I took a start in my job just after September 1st here. And I think, we know that we can bridge that gap because of the different people that we have. Like I was in college coaching. You have been in player development for a long time. Like we just have different people from different spaces, and we have these college coaches saying one thing and these athletes saying one thing, and we're like hearing both, and we're like, we can merge this. Like we have a place here. And again, it's not just us. There are probably other people out there as well that are doing things better than the current system. But I think we feel like we have, we feel like when we're hearing this, like we have those answers.
The right merging of the right variables.
Let us just help you out. And I think that's a space that some people have to be open to. And I think, again, these kids and these parents and these kids and these families that want to be recruited, you have to take some real ownership and stop putting it in the hands of somebody else. And you have to take some real ownership and get real information.
Okay, so we probably should have made this 3 episodes long. Like, I'm not watching the timer, but my thoughts are that this was probably really long. But there's a lot to talk about, obviously. We might have to come back and revisit this. Ryker, thank you. Absolutely. Thank you for joining us today, for being a part of what I now call the Dream Team. As you know, this is a topic, as we've already mentioned, we're really, really passionate about because we see the impact, the consequences it has on our athletes every single day. And we know we can create something better. So stay along with us as we obviously keep announcing the different things that we're going to be putting in place to really provide these services for our athletes. Again, great discussion. So glad everybody was here to join us. Be sure to tune in next time on Redefine the Circle. We have so much going on here as we're entering into off-season training. We're going to be bringing a lot of topics about the ways in which the types of things our athletes are focused on, how they're influencing their data. A lot of off-season topics that I think are really, really important that will come up in future episodes of Redefine the Circle. Between now and next episode, thank you for joining everyone. Keep questing on to redefine the circle. Thanks.